Hey, what's happening, guys? Just sipping on a fresh candle, editing some podcast episodes. I haven't really told a lot of people this, but I got COVID in August, and I'm kind of have a backlog of projects, and but I'm working on them, and I'm going to bring you one right now. And this is actually from a dude that I met online on Instagram. Great guy named Cabil Gibbs. He's an author of a book called Fear of Love and Corona. Which is really interesting. Last year, I was working on a book that was very similar in title. So when I found out that this dude wrote this book, I had to reach out to him and try to pick his brain on his thoughts of what we've all been through the past year or so. He actually was a very accomplished actor. He has a very interesting story to tell, and yeah, man, I found it to be very, you never know what other people have gone through. And it's really quite amazing, man, when you really have a conversation with someone, the things that you can hear that people have experienced. It's really quite profound and very interesting, man. And it reminds me of just how many amazing people in the world there are that sometimes we just don't really realize or think about. I love the episode that we have, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So without further ado, here's Mr. Cabil Gibbs. Looking forward to the conversation we'll have. I know you're a man of conviction. I've been following you on Instagram, and man, you really believe in the things that you say and the things that you are passionate about, man. And it seems like you really are trying to make the world a better place. And I feel like you have such an openness to who you are as a person and the things you post. And you're actually another person through social media that I've just kind of run into and I just kind of vibed with, man. So for people that don't know you, just kind of give kind of a general summary of who you are, kind of your story, and what led up to writing this book of yours.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That's a huge compliment, and I really, really appreciate that. Okay, like a quick overall just kind of thing. I'm 42. Mm-hmm. I was born in my cousin's bed, Boulder, Colorado, stayed there for 9 months, moved to Virginia, lived in the country, very lean years. Basically alcoholic dad, breakup, divorce, terrible stepdad. I went everything from juvenile hall to dropping out of high school twice. Obviously a lot of stories. I'm actually writing another book for the whole life story called The Beginnings of a Jewel Thief. So it's a pretty catchy, it's a pretty cool, I'm super honest. It's a really cool title. But also, to be honest with you, writing is a therapy. Y'all probably all know that. Anyway. So to shine that light on that deep monster down in the closet, deep in our souls, that's kind of pulling strings on us that we may not even know. Writing is one way to get that out, and in a vulnerable way, though, I'd say, not kind of a check out these cool stories of what I did here and there, but more of a therapeutic way of being vulnerable and being honest and letting out some of those insecurities through shining that light through the public. But then I dropped out of high school twice, meaning failure due to absence is the first time, then kind of begged to come back, and then just did it again, failure due to absences. My parents moved out, and I had like this trailer in a trailer park with another friend, and we had already started drinking and this and that in high school. And so I only made it to maybe March or April of the next stint. Then I moved to California, started waiting tables, which I think should be a college course for about anybody to learn the cadence, how to talk to people, how to tip, how to treat people, how to eat dirt sometimes, deal with bosses, deal with pressure. And so I stayed out there for about a few different restaurants, Northern California, then moved to Southern California, only was there about 9 months, came all the way back to the East Coast I went to airplane mechanic school in Embry-Riddle, Daytona Beach. I also did some flight school. I only had 39 hours, ran out of money, but also I got picked up. I was playing beach volleyball, and I was trying to get competitive at that. And I know our Olympic Phil Dahlhauser and Nick Lucena. That was kind of when they were first starting out too. They were ahead of me though, even at that stage. They were really good. But I got one of Phil's old partners, blah, blah. But anyways, on the beach volleyball court, I got approached and I ended up getting into modeling. So I ended up doing that for about 5.5 years, four and a half to 5 years, actually, internationally, from Milan, Paris, this, that, and the next thing, which is a super gangster business, which can be super hurtful. And there'll be a lot of stories about that one in the next book, but the pitfalls, the agents, the just how it creates insecurities, being judged, the drug, the alcohol, the ease of taking the easy road rather than actually trying hard. Did that, then I ended up going back to try to finish airplane mechanic school. That's when I ran out of the money. And then I moved to Austin, Texas. Fell in love with blues music. There's been a lot of years where I had alcohol and even some drug problems, cocaine specifically. And just running from myself, running from responsibility. I was more addicted to having fun than it was the actual just sit around and do it. So it was kind of just a rebellious nature, drinking, partying, having fun. But they call Austin, Texas, Ozton, O-Z, where some people go to never grow up.
Oh, wow.
It's changed. Austin's changed. I left out of there in 2015. But it's changed. It's gotten super LA, Cali vibey, and super crowded. So it's definitely changed. But anyways, back then I ended up getting into acting and doing stunts. I became the right-hand man for a big stunt coordinator. He was calling me for different things. I was getting in, but I was messing up. I was messing it up due to just partying too much, to be honest. Like, that's the truth of the matter. And then I ended up getting into some other stuff, and I was downtown one time. I fell out of a window. I fell out of a window backwards onto concrete. Okay, about 2.5 stories up, and I shattered both of my feet. My calcaneus, which is basically the heel bone. So it's shaped like a light bulb. When that was crushed, kind of lost some length in my leg, and then I broke some other bones in the other foot, so I couldn't walk. Before I was cleared to walk, I was run off the road. I was driving to the doctor actually to be cleared to walk. I just got a couple of big rolls. They were kind of stalling and delaying it because we were trying not to tell everybody that I was injured because they were more acting roles, blah, blah. I had crutches in the car and everything. Sorry, we had some birds in the background over here trying to do a little cameo. But so I run off the road at like 70 miles an hour and end up hitting a tree and spiral fracture my tib fib. Oh. So I was back on the couch. So now we're talking about, So now we're talking about 6 months, no walking, not even cleared to walk.
How old were you?
The depression of not only losing athleticism, and that was like around 35. So testosterone, pivotal point, not being able to walk, the atrophy, the deterioration of the soul, and then there's a lot of stuff. But I kind of made it through that. Well, and was looking for different ways to heal. The head was the most important thing that I didn't really have any coaching or schooling on, and I didn't have the doctors, I guess, just to cover their own behind, they kind of tell you, look, you're never going to be the same. You're never going to be able to jump like you did, whatever, which I guess they have to say, but in some ways you want to hear the other side of that, the positive side, like work hard, you can get it back. Anyway, so a year goes by. I'm still not working out correctly because of the depression, and I lost pretty much the career. I lost a lot of different stuff. All the fake party friends, and nobody was visiting me. You know, I have one friend, one of my really good dear friends, named Rudy. He stayed with me. He was the only one. And so bottom line, and what a friend too. He's super high caliber, thin air living guy. But anyway, so a year later, my dad was killed by a snowplow in Virginia on backcountry roads of Fauquier County. And through that, the whole other mess of problems happened where to sell the land, I didn't. So after a year, you can't, they can force you to. Bottom line, if you have at least in Virginia, I'm in Virginia, at least in Virginia, if you have a fair offer and one sibling wants to sell, which I guess fair, but it wasn't like $1 million. It wasn't a lot. But what it did, we ended up selling. And what it did is it got me enough money to go on a spiritual trek. So I went to India, Nepal, Romania, Amsterdam, Spain. And that's where I was exposed to yoga in Rishikesh, India. I went there with a very eclectic group of 5 people from Romania that I've met at a martial arts seminar, the DKU, a famous Korean martial artist. He was on a seminar for whatever reason. I saw it on the internet. It was like a 3-day thing. I met some really cool people there. One of my friends, Andre, is a really good friend. I'm still in contact with. Talked to him like a couple of days ago. He's in Germany now. But anyways, I met another guy who was saying a shaman. That wait a second. But so he went. There was him. He's also a police officer in Romania, Bucharest, Romania. An army captain, the shaman, a speech therapist for children, an artist, and a nutritionist. One lady was severely overweight. It was just a super eclectic crew. We went to India together, and this is a funny side story. I came back to America after meeting him. He told me about the trip. I think it was 1,600 euros for 2 weeks. All flights included, interior, and some little field trip kind of things. I never asked him where we were going. I flew over to Bucharest. We all met up. We flew to India through Moscow, this, that, and the next thing. Missed flights. We ended up taking we missed our interior flight, and we ended up taking a cab from New Delhi to Rishikesh, which is I think it was about 6, 7, 8 hours. And we were about 6 hours into it. And they were laughing in the back seat, and I could tell that they were laughing at me. I asked them what they were, and I go, "What are y'all laughing at?" You know, they're like, "Cabil, you never asked where we were going." They're like, "This is trust." So I paid them. They obviously were honest people. I never even asked them where we were going, but it ended up being Rishikesh, which is the birthplace of yoga. The Beatles used to go there, and so back they still have paintings on these little ashrams from them, literally from them. But anyways, all that to say, that's where I was exposed to yoga. I used to feel it was a little bit too trendy and a little too sceney, the whole LA vibe, yoga, whatever. It's almost like a CrossFit thing. But out there, I was exposed to meditation as well. So that was life-changing. That's where you're seeing the person that you're seeing now. That's kind of the start of it. Is being in severe pain from not only losing the parent, but the depression of all those things combined from that, like I said, losing the athleticism, some of it, like, not everything. You get it back through hard work. But just to be honest, that's a rough time for a male to go through severe injuries, like 35 years old. Like I said, the testosterone, all these kind of different things are coming at one time. Loss of the career, loss of the friend, loss of the family. I stopped talking to the family. They got boots. It was a dishonest kind of situation. So it came, the teacher appears when a student is ready. Let's say it like that. And so I ended up not being able to. I stayed over there for only about 2.5 weeks. Then I had a 2-month visa, but I decided to come back and apply for like a 10-year visa. I didn't get it. And so then I ended up to Nepal. Nepal, you can go straight in with the passport. So I went to Nepal. I did a yoga teacher certification. I did a motorcycle trip from Kathmandu to the Tibetan border. I volunteered with the elephants and did all kinds of little interior trips. I spent 9 days meditating in Lumbini, which is Buddha's birthplace. Mm-hmm. Here is the deep search, the internal search of to the book. The book is about, I was always a hesitant. I always looked at self-love almost, well, maybe the examples that I've seen have been a bit narcissistic. Let's be honest. There's a fine line between true self-love and loving yourself a little too much.
Mm. That's good.
So that's a lot of that. I know that's a lot, but I'm just putting it out there. Like,
how
we're doing it. But
absolutely,
that pretty much gets us to the book.
No, dude, like what you just said right there is something that I really.
Oh, am I still going? Yeah. So
you go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I want you to go, but it's just to get a timeline going. Mm-hmm. That I finished that. I got back from fall 2018. Mm-hmm. And then I moved to Kansas City with that same friend, actually kind of house sitting for him. Then try to get back into entertainment stunts. I'm super dope. Mm-hmm. Almost 4 years ago is when I kind of started this internal meditation yoga. Mm-hmm. But please go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. So, what you said there about self-love and about there being like this, it's weird. I've been very intrigued about that whole idea because I've been someone who's really struggled my whole life with kind of accepting, myself. And it took a long, long time to even, it's weird. There's almost like that proverb about, when you accumulate more knowledge, you accumulate more sorrow, so sometimes the way that you are growing as a person, you think it's going to, in some ways, it brings you closer to people because you understand the human condition. But then again, it also detaches you because you see just how, I don't want to sound mean, but you do realize just how some people are very detached from, I guess, the inner work in the West, and how we're so busy and how you can get pessimistic and how too often self-love turns into this weird, I don't know how to actually regulate it to where there's a balance between making sure it's not in excess to where it's prideful or even that it's forced, because too often what we know is right and what is, I don't know, it's like what we know is right regarding self-love and what we feel is its proper place in our lives. Sometimes there's other issues that we have to deal with, but we're trying to force it because we're trying to stay positive. And so we're repressing kind of the darker kind of things that we have to address. And so to me, self-love isn't just this bliss. It's not just this thing that is just, we ignore the bad. It's actually the domain, I would say, of grace. What we realize that in this, we come into this world unconditionally. And in a lot of my writings that I'm working on is exploring this phenomenon that, where we get unconditional love from is this fact of life that we exist unconditionally. Like everything in life exists regardless of what we've done. We just have to cooperate with the laws of joy, the laws of happiness, the laws of love and life. And so when we come into this world, the fundamental fact of our lives is this unconditional reality that we enter into. And so for me, every aspect of our life should be undergirded by this realization that not only do we exist unconditionally, but all the answers, all the inner realizations that we need of our own value and all the things that, there are unconditional realities that we just have to spend enough time accepting. And when we really accept the underlying things that hold our own life and have kind of held our lives, our whole lives as we enter into this world, we begin to rest kind of in, I think, the nature of life. We're not trying to force our value, but we accept our value. And so to me, self-love is something where we're not trying to force our love of ourselves or trying to run away from the darkness. It's like there's this integration of what is, and kind of in that atmosphere of grace that allows us to kind of go into some of the darker areas and actually see, okay, so what's going on here? You know, what is not true about my experience of the world, and what is true? What are some things that are sort of wrapped up and tangled together that I have to kind of, with a certain degree of surgical precision, you know, kind of separate and not exaggerate, you know? And so for me, a lot of people that I follow, you know, on social media, all the writers that I enjoy are people that are kind of engaged in this process, that like there's these details of life. We have to slow down. You know, we have to kind of withdraw ourselves from the norm of what our society has become. And, you know, I'm OCD and ADHD. And so for me, I gotta slow myself extra down, you know, or I'm just like, my mind, I've always experienced the world in like HD, you know? And so for me, a lot of my life has been kind of repressing my own experience of myself and of the world. And just, you know, in my own story that I'm attempting to tell, you know, in all the things that I do, there's this fundamental joy that we have of existence that kind of, gives us that comfort to kind of rest within ourselves. And I think, you know, especially in Western spirituality, we became we became hyper Western, you know, to where a lot of the elements of the East, you know, I think are so refreshing to the human mind, to the average person. And to me, finding kind of like that happy balance of, you know, the intellect, but also kind of that, I don't know, I guess sort of the, if I had to summarize the East, it's a little more of a holistic kind of notion of being. And for me, kind of finding your own resolution as a Westerner, you know, not totally denying the Western mind, but not also thinking it's the only thing that exists. Because, you know, I kind of feel like we're out of balance. And, you know, especially as we increase in technology, it kind of increases our ability for error in our present state that inherits that technology, you know? And so anyway, I'm kind of going just miscellaneous, but I'm really interested because to hear, you know, a lot of your thoughts regarding this book, because it sounds like yourself, man, the lockdown last year and COVID and everything really got me to a place of going inward more than ever. And honestly, I mean, I hate to say this, but in some ways, like last year, I needed the time to like withdraw myself and not feel guilty about it. You know, sometimes we withdraw ourselves and we are like, I got all these responsibilities. I got all these things I need to do. And then when we have like, when it's forced on us, it's kind of like, okay, good. I can take a break and not feel guilty about it, you know? And so even though I very much, I hate all the misery and pain that was last year for me, like, you know, there was some elements of positivity that I was able to run with and withdraw myself and to really develop some of these ideas of my own to feel more stable, to feel like I'm more conscious of who I am. And it really kind of inspired me to, you know, to really go in with this podcast and begin to just have conversations with people, man, and begin to just experience the world in a bigger way and connect with people. And so, yeah, man. So that said, man, I'm really interested to hear about your book in context to your story, and to hear about how maybe you had kind of a similar experience of last year.
Okay. Yeah, all that's good. That's really cool stuff, though. I'm glad you got a positive look on that on last year. That's really cool. Mine was a bit. Basically, the book is called "The Fear of Love in Corona." 17,840 miles during COVID lockdown election. So at the beginning, there's a love story that basically a goddess of a being in Miami Beach basically rocked me and was exposing some insecurities, some confidence issues, and all this kind of stuff. This is where the fear of love comes in. So honestly, right as the pandemic was hitting, like middle of March, That's a long story. It's in the book. But basically, we were talking kind of serious. It was like, let's get together pretty much and try to help people in any way we can. Let's like bounce ideas off each other, really get a system down. And I got spooked. I got spooked because of COVID as well. When the toilet paper effect hit, I didn't know how far things were going to go. I was in Daytona Beach. I was getting ready to go back down to her in Miami. But of course, that fear of love, because of my childhood, and just all the nonsense I've seen in life, I haven't seen a lot of loving relationships work out long term. So there's something inside that says, why don't we just go ahead and ruin this now before we get all involved, and it just gets ruined down the road anyway. So that was she was preaching self-love. I was still, I still was believing, you love thy neighbor more than love thyself.
Yeah.
Once again, because of that fine line between narcissism, the like you're saying, almost the bypassing of emotion, which is one of the things of narcissism is, they say when a kid is younger, they're shamed really, really big time by their parents. Let's say 3 years old. They can't handle the shame, so they reroute their neural pathways. So that's where a narcissist, it makes sense to me. And so some of these people that are doing self-love, they're rerouting some neural pathways to not deal with certain things, which, it may feel better for you, but it doesn't mean it's the healthy road to go for the being itself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So bottom line was, and I'm not saying this about her, she's wonderful. I hope she's wonderful. But the bottom line is I was scared of maybe it being too wonderful and wouldn't like me. So I'm like, why don't we go ahead and ruin this? Plus the toilet paper effect hit. I got spooked by her. I created some little squabble and ended up being like, we should talk later or something like that. The next day, something else happened. All this is in the book, so no need to go into too much of it. The fear of love and corona. No, but and the toilet paper effect. Then I'm thinking, okay, well, what if the food supplies start going downhill, right? What if the next thing is people are bushing for the food and we're fighting in the grocery stores? I'm like, Florida's not the place to be. It's getting ready to start turning summertime. I'm like, I'm gonna get myself up to the mountains. So I packed Poncho, the van is named Poncho. So I put everything from food, dried food, water purification systems, fishing poles, blankets, tents, tarps, everything. And I started heading out. I head out around March 29th, I believe, maybe March 30th. First stop was St. Augustine to get my bearings. And then I went off and I traveled the whole 9 months, all the way from March through November. I met a fellow nomad on the road, a super heavy set guy that could only get about 100 yards from his minivan. He had a little dog, and he showed me some freecamping.net apps, so some free camping apps. To be honest with you, everything was closed, even mom and pop campsites way up in the country. So it was very scary how far of a reach media has and how much fear it instilled in just a damn near everybody. It's scary in itself. So there more fear started propelling the trip. Montana was what was calling me. I was trying to get up as far kind of away from people as possible. A lot of it was fear, but a lot of it was also just to get away from the tense feeling of the East Coast and just the amount of people and just how weird everything. There wasn't a lot of trust. From me, there was almost zero trust in the media. So after that feeling of distrusting the media and feeling there was something going on, which we don't have to get into all that.
I'm with you, man.
Everybody's got their own thing on that these days. But then the truth, time tells all, right? So we'll find the truth. Nobody can escape that. So the bottom line is figured out how to nomad. Started there. Walmart's, believe it or not. Most Walmarts around the country allow at least 2 night stays. Some of them are cool. Some of them don't at all. Like so in the cities, they're actually kind of in the cities and strip malls, and they're not going to let you, and they'll knock on it and there'll be signs. But I met everybody from, I rode on tractors. I started rock hounding. I met a beautiful woman in Farson, Wyoming. Her name is Feather in the book. And she taught me how to rock hound and dig for just different rocks and gems and crystals and fossilized wood, fossilized algae. I started wire wrapping, doing necklaces. I played a little bit of guitar at a cowboy folk concert. One of my friends now 8 years old. I stayed on his band about 4 different times. I visited that same friend Rudy in Boise about 4 times. I petitioned, believe it or not, for the Kanye West campaign. Actually, just make money for the road. I met some farmers. I stayed on their farm. I rode in his tractor. One man takes care of 4,000 acres. By interesting tidbit. And I went to 5 national parks, the Oregon coast. I have some beautiful friends over there, a couple that are on the Oregon coast, and they opened up their home and their cute dog. And so I actually house sat for them for a little bit. Then up the coast of Washington, back around to Montana. Probably did 7,000 miles in Montana. Back to Boise, all 5 national parks. Just camping, doing everything, jumping in as many different bodies of water as I could, cleansing that, doing as much qigong, stance work, yoga outside, soaking in with nature, and finding the people, not being told what to do. I feel that there's a lot of power within hugging people, breathing correctly. A lot of things that they were trying to take away is some of the things I believe in the most. So there's definitely a rebellious streak in there. Not that I'm screaming from the rooftops to tell everybody to do what I'm doing, but I would say follow your own path. The serendipitous pursuit, it's kind of the wave that we were talking about, where sometimes you feel like you're in front of yourself, behind yourself. So spiritually, like you can start, like the other day, I'm like, I'm tired of even thinking about all this, right? I'm looking at people are talking about spirituality all day long. It starts to get to be like, okay, look, you're not going to speed it up. It's got its own pace, just like writing a book. You can't really speed up certain processes. What you can do is try to marry yourself and ride that wave smoothly. Flow state. So flow state, it would be, I look at it like almost sitting in an inner tube, riding, flowing down. You use your hands to course correct, right? So you don't hit the rocks and the banks and the sticks, but you're not upriver, and you're not drinking and laughing all the time with your friends. You're not grasping the nature that you're soaking in, listening. The Zen is in listening to the mountain stream, however many miles away, listening, not talking, listening to learn, finding the Zen within, stopping the mind, literally stopping the mind from thinking is one of the biggest things. So all that, the whole trip was teaching me, and of course this, the losing, quote unquote, losing a love because of the refusal to love oneself. But the point is if you don't know how to love yourself and take care of yourself, how can you take care of somebody else? If you're forgetting how to bathe yourself correctly, you're forgetting to brush your teeth right, you're forgetting to calm yourself down, how are you literally, and it is true. So, but sometimes it takes losing something to finally smack it into the stubborn people's head like me. And so through the tears and the loss, I learned how to self-love. And through the just being by myself and these lessons that were ringing in my head from I believe, call it life, the eternal ladder of learning, the eternal ladder of learning. So literally everything, it's almost like the, if you've ever played or bowled, when they have, as a kid or a Boy Scout troop, Girl Scout troop, and they have those bumpers, they have these blow up bumpers in the gutters. Right. So when you bowl, it'll hit the bumper. You don't ever have to gutter ball. So I look at life like that now, where the yin and the yang, the positive and the negative are corralling you. You're just kind of bumping your way down this three-dimensional tunnel, bumping into everything, moving forward. So even the bumps and the scrapes are still lessons to learn you down the path.
That's
right.
good.
So the eternal ladder of learning. So as long as we look at, as long as we look at even the pain as a teaching tool, then at least we're gleaning the lesson, and at least we're benefiting from the pain. It's the only thing that I can see, and it's not. I don't believe it's just making something up to deal with the pain. I really think it is that. I really think that they have a saying, the pain retains. And sometimes if you're not getting the point, the universe itself has to really drill it through to you. You get the point now. So the hesitant journey of self-love, one man's hesitant journey realizing self-love is what I wrote up for the back of the book, while in the serendipitous pursuit. Now, how I trust the serendipitous pursuit is through character development. If we feel that we are a good person, we can trust in our momentum going down the road, right? So as long as we are doing the right things, we can trust in believing that our path is correct, therefore not having fear going into the unknown. It softens the fear of the unknown because we are trusting and we believe that our path will lead us the correct way because we are kind. You know what I'm saying? A lot of like that.
Yeah. No, that's great, dude. That's some really good stuff, man. I think I had messaged you this, but during the pandemic, I for a few months I was working on a manuscript for a book that was Uniphobia, the fear of being whole. And it was like, when I saw that your book was the fear of love, I really felt there was like a kind of a synchronistic kind of thing where like I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is like the, like it's like the universe wants me to talk to this person, And so I really feel like what you have to say is so important for a lot of what people are dealing with today, because I feel like self-love is like the most trendy self-help kind of thing, because you can kind of make it whatever you want to make it. Like you can love yourself on your own terms, as opposed to a deeper, like kind of a deeper introspection. Maybe your own terms are incorrect. Like maybe there are ways you're loving yourself incorrectly, because you can justify love. You can forms of love in all sorts of abstract ways, like, now for myself, I'm a very outside the box spiritual person, it's weird. I have, my foundation, I consider myself a Christian, but I'm also someone who's very, I'm a huge fan of Carl Jung. I'm very Jungian in my ways that I look at things. I'm very Eastern, I feel like most of Western Christianity is actually, there's a lot of legalism. There's a lot of, it's actually a lot of it's rooted in ego. It's all about you trying to earn something, and for me, when I read like the New Testament, like I really see in things that are opposite of what the church and what Christendom has been for a long time. And it's honestly like, for me, Christianity had problems ever since it was conceived. There's like people getting it wrong. And so it's been the force of, there's been a lot of power dynamics. And so in the realm of spirituality, in the realm of religion, there's so much human manipulation of things. And so it's incumbent on us to, when we go to these things and really educate ourselves, to challenge ourselves, to say, okay, I'm just not going to take what's being told. I got to find things out for myself, and I have to kind of learn how to navigate meaning in this world. And, one thing that really rings true for me is that, like, when you think about love, when you think about the concept of love, and people will say, well, God is love. And then also say, well, God's also going to smite you with cancer to teach you something. It's kind of like, it's like, okay, so that's, it's love then has no meaning whatsoever. If it's going to be something that is just whatever happens, it's like insanity almost, And so for me, when you define love and when you define things that are spiritual, they have to have such a practical foundation of understanding and ways that they're the building blocks of what are really your foundational the foundation by which you construct your identity or your sense of self, and so for me, like when I think about the degree of this is one of my favorite things that I've read in the Bible, where it says the strength of sin is the law. When you tell someone, to do something, or thou shalt do this, or thou shalt not do this, it actually strengthens the very thing. It strengthens the very thing that's the opposite. It's kind of like, don't think of a dog. You think of a dog, And so it's one of those elements when it comes to spirituality that people, I never hear that talked about. Like, it's an element that, as someone who has dealt with OCD, that's like the story of my life in like one little verse, is that like when you try to do something and you try to focus on something, it's like, or you try to focus on not doing something, you can't really do that. You have to find something else to focus on in order to transcend your engagement with this false dynamic of yourself. And so for me, self-love is a sort of engagement of what is the higher dimensional function of who I am that transcends all these other areas that I may struggle with, that like, I'm trying to not do this. I'm trying to not be this. I'm trying to, instead of actually being like instead of being a successful person, aiming for success, aiming for love, aiming for all these positive things, we're trying to not be a failure, trying to not be unattractive, or we've taken virtue, and instead of aiming for something, we've actually kind of like mirrored virtue to be like backwards virtue, how we're trying to not be this instead of being something. And so for me, a lot of our spirituality in the West is this attempt to not be something, as opposed to accepting who we really are. And for me, spirituality in essence is this sense of being raptured with the sense, or with the potential of one's joy and one's love, and kind of developing it. And you can only start where you are right now. And it's something that when you start that road, you can only put one foot in front of the other and do the best you can at trying to receive, your own definition, and to me, self-love, there's actually like, I'm going to say this, not because I actually believe it, but I'm just going to say it just to be kind of controversial. But what if self-love is a myth? What if actually understanding oneself, when you understand oneself, you by default love yourself? And so instead of preaching self-love, what if we were to preach understanding, self-discovery? Because to me, one thing that I love about a lot of Christian theology, this idea that, when you understand God, you love him, but you can't love him without understanding. It's kind of like a person in a relationship. Or if you love someone, on a deeper way, you have to understand them. And so that understanding is the thing that kind of defines your love, because when you do something that's maybe not characteristic of yourself, I don't define you based on that moment. I understand you, and I define you based on something else, and like when I fall from grace, or if I fall from being the person that I know that I am, and that somebody else who's not me kind of defines me as this person. When I don't live up to that, they don't judge me based on my failure, but they're like, you know what? I'm choosing to love you because you're this person. I'm not going to define you based on your failure, but on your success of who you are as a person and who you really are, and so, man, like when we talk about self-love, there's this understanding, I think, of each other, that to really love oneself is to kind of understand oneself, to really have that illumination of the facts of one's existence. That I think that there is an unconditional grace in this world, that we, in the back of our minds, all throughout it, like we know that there's something there, that we should strive to be something that we know we really are, and that when we're not living up to that, we feel weak, we feel drained. We feel somewhat soulless, you know. And I think the pursuit of enlightenment and spiritual things is kind of growing an awareness of the miracle of who we actually are, because only then can we put the correct value on others, because we bring to our engagement with others the strength of individual conscience, of our individual awareness, you know. I'm kind of just going off right now, but like, but
no,
yeah.
I love it. I love the understanding, love via the understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I also like the term self-work.
Mm-hmm.
And I know exactly what you're talking about as far as the negative self-talk. Okay, what we were talking about as far as concentrating on the not being the negative thing,
Mm-hmm.
actually produces the negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that exact point right there has been what some weird powers have tricked us into being lowered on the totem pole,
Mm-hmm.
because of focusing on that negative. And that's why negative thought, that looping negative thought, is the first thing that I would try to help somebody, that I try to help myself get over.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not completely over it. I'm not saying I am, but
Mm-hmm.
what I've been doing is putting little sticky notepads up literally on the washing machine, the dryer, saying, "I love you, Cable," you know, unconditional love, you know, just all these little cute things. So you're starting to condition the mind to think automatically that positive thing rather than that negative thing. So I'm super glad that you touched on that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the self-work thing, I think one of the ways that we can identify a self-love practitioner that may not be in it for the right reasons, or not displaying it correctly, is when they're somewhat of a spiritual snob. Mm-hmm. Right? When their self-love is more about, look what I am. Look what I am. I have arrived at self-love. I am a god. I am a goddess. Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest indicator of that's going a little over the hump with you know what I'm saying? But they deserve love too. I want everybody to reach it, but I don't want it to be a false. I don't want it to be a conning of oneself. And sometimes confidence starts with that word con, right? A con artist. So overconfidence can be literally conning oneself into being at a level where you might not be yet. And so, but portraying it to others helps you build your momentum into actually believing it yourself. But it's at the detriment of the people that are looking at you like, oh my God, I'm not that yet. And so you're almost stealing their power by acting better than.
That's so good. That's so good.
That's where I start to get pissed. No, I'm just kidding. But no, that's when it starts to turn into that thing that would be over the hump. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and that's where I go ahead.
No, that's good stuff, man. That's really good.
I try to keep it.
No, yeah, no, man. Like that was I might use that for a highlight. Like I've been meaning to do like short little videos for TikTok or for YouTube, where those moments where in the conversation where we get really, we have an idea, and in the moment that idea is just so potent, and that to what you articulated there was so cool, man. It's funny how like we will overlook language. We will, like, there's little tidbits of like insight in the words we use. Man, and like one of my favorite things that I've actually more recently I've seen people use this exact example. Like I thought, when I kind of wrote this down, a while back, I thought I was kind of like, I guess I thought I was special, but like now it's funny. There's a lot of these ideas that you just see are common ideas that are catching fire. But one of them is the word responsibility is your ability to respond, and so when responsibility is kind of preached to us as kids or as teenagers or young adults or whatever, there's this idea that it's like, I don't know, it sounds so like we have to do these things because we're supposed to, when it actually it is, we have the ability to actually respond to the world around us. Like real responsibility isn't going on autopilot to meet all the demands of life. It's actually, in some ways, it's actually withdrawing yourself from the craziness to saying, okay, how do I effectively respond to the things in my life to make them, to fulfill these areas to go where I want to go, and no, man. So like when it's funny, there's words that we use that if we can kind of deconstruct them, they hold such meaning. There's such meaning in all the little aspects of life. And that's why you were talking about breaking like the circle that we can get in sometimes. And it's funny because I think there's this thing, like I think I heard Dr. Jordan Peterson talk about this, about how like, either everything means something or nothing means anything. And when you are able to bring about awareness in your own, and to kind of stop thinking, you realize that so much knowledge is already kind of around you, and that like, to be hyper thinking, there's just so much more information that you naturally will work with if you just function as the way that we're wired. And if we are trying to rewire ourselves to try to have control over reality, we begin to kind of hyper think. And it's like at some point, like it's an illusion, because we're never going to have control over everything. It's like the quicker we can realize that, okay, I have to humble myself, let go, and realize that there's meaning all around me. In every interaction, I will naturally respond the way that I need to most of the time. If I'm able to actually disconnect myself from wanting to have control, if I can kind of just rest in my ability to, to just, in some of if I can just rest in some of the ways that I've cultivated my character, cultivated my awareness. At some point, you don't have to just hyper think all the time. You can kind of rest because you're used to feeling these areas within you. And so in real time, you naturally say things when when a demand is made on you, when you're in a situation. Many times, like that's what's great about these conversations, that a lot of times, I don't have anything planned. We just have a conversation and things come out, and then it's really exciting because we're trying to in real time operate into things that we're writing about, talking about, and that's part and parcel of how we're supposed to engage everything in our life 24/7, is that there's a certain resting that we're doing within ourselves. There is work that we do. There is things that we do think about, but at the same time, at all times, we have to realize if we're trying to grow, at like a hyper pace, or trying to go beyond what we need to be, we're actually not growing. It's like there's a certain degree of growth, certain degree of awareness that we're capable of right now. And that's our number one job, is to sort of not be brought into these circles of thought or overthinking, these circles of they're actually kind of soul killing things, because we immediately kind of cut ourselves off from the rest of ourselves, and we're operating in like a lower dimensional place. It's like when we're able to rest within ourselves, the multidimensionality of who we actually are comes out. And when many times we know what to say, not because we have lots of things to say, but how we say it. Many times you don't need to say a bunch of things. You just need to smile and say something with a few words, and that preaches more than like a whole book. There's just like your foundational being is able to bring to everything you do a higher dimensionality, that if you just try to go on one dimension of trying to think, it'll take you 10 years to accomplish this. If you can live on a multi-dimensional level and just kind of rest within yourself, there's so much more you can get accomplished in a small amount of time.
Right. It's reminding me of that's why I was right. I got a little paper and pencil here. Tone is one of my biggest things. What's your tone? Right? You know what I mean? Whether you're talking to a dog, a waiter, a kid, your spouse, it shows me about everything about a person is the way that they speak to somebody or something, or even themselves. I think it was Alan Watts said, rushing is a form of hesitation. Ooh. Rushing to do something is actually a form of hesitation. You're giving yourself an excuse to be able to mess up because you rushed. So it's actually hesitation. Rushing is a hesitation. It's super interesting.
That's really good, man. That's been
That's a good one, right?
That's really good,
Totally.
man.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying that Alan Watts has some really good stuff, man. I love listening to him because he has such an interesting way of thinking. You know, I may not agree with like everything he says, but like he takes you somewhere, and it's more of how he says things and more of how he, yeah, man, he's someone that I can just listen to for hours, and it's just like, but that's so good. That's like that's a very wise person, and that's actually that sounds like Watts. That's actually really that's an amazing quote. I got to remember that because I'm kind of, it's weird. I'm actually trying to I think I told this earlier, but like I've been trying to cut back on coffee because I naturally am a enthusiastic person, very, very, whatever. And I feel like that at some point, I don't know if it's a mental thing or if it's a natural physiological acidity that's building up, but I get really murky the more if I drink coffee every day. And so I have to sometimes just take a day off where I feel absolutely miserable. And yet I can feel my mind rest, and I sleep, and then I dream, and it's really, and then next day I'm like mentally so much more clear-headed. And I love coffee. I absolutely adore coffee, but it's almost I almost feel like we can't be in a hurry to break in any process that we're in. And when I meditate in the morning and I read and I do things and stuff, I love coffee when I write because my mind's just firing, but it's almost like that's kind of an unnatural state, and I don't have to have that, and I shouldn't have to rely on it, and I shouldn't have to think that unless I have that I have to, that I'm not capable of my potential. And so I don't know, man. I'm as a person who loves coffee, I've also seen how it feeds sometimes an error that I'm trying to fix in my life, that I'm trying to slow down. I'm trying to be more present, man, for someone who just thinks so fast and is so just like all over the place. Coffee is the thing that almost when I taper from, I see a tremendous mental benefit and psychological benefit, even though my body is screaming, but that was kind of random, but I just thought I'd throw that in there,
No, I totally agree. Coffee's a problem. And definitely in the Eastern philosophies, coffee's a no-no for meditation guru people. That'd be the first thing they would tell you if you want to be successful in meditation is cut the coffee. And I think it's just so accepted. I think it's a serious crutch. I think people are walking around amped up and frustrated, annoyed. They don't have much left. They're already up to here, and it just turns into a huge problem. Driving faster, they're blurting things out. I think coffee's a way bigger problem than I don't know how to address it. To get everybody to quit coffee, Jesus, I don't think that's going to happen. But for the people that really, really are on that internal self-work search and are brave enough to ask themselves, can I rely on just my own energy? Right? And that's really the brave that are trying to bear. And when the signs are showing you, coffee is causing, for me, I had one earlier today because I knew I was going to do this, but I usually go to bed around 8 or 9. But before that, maybe a week. If I'm doing like on the road, I go driving, but I'm trying to get it to never. But I still dabble here and there because let's be honest, it's fun to do. But really, you would like to not do it. But I don't know how to solve that one. But the answer, I think I was going to the answers are all, and they're not going to be the ones that you want to hear. It's not going to say, "Oh, the answer is 2 cups of coffee." The lessons are all around us, and when they talk to you, I advise to listen, because once you listen, you get more, and then you get more and more and more, and the more you listen, the more. And if we're looking at this life as a growth, an opportunity to grow, and then wouldn't we want to grow as fast as we can in the allotted amount of time. If we start listening to all the lessons, we could grow, let's call it 10 rungs up the ladder. Or do you want to just go one rung up the ladder this life, or do you want to try to get your 20 rungs in? Yeah. So I look at it like that, of using the allotted time as best we can to get as far up as we can. But I don't think that there ever is an arrival at, and I believe enlightenment, it starts over every day, because eternity is a long time. I mean, there's a lot of, we're getting pretty deep here, but the eternal ladder of learning, meaning you never truly arrive. Yeah. There is only continue to do the work, but you get better at techniques, and you get better at understanding why it's happening. Therefore, you're like a lesson. Yeah. And then once we understand that the suffering we used to feel is actually helping us, now we're getting to that everything is play. That mentality that this is a video, even the hardships. Okay, well, you have a flat tire. How many people have met their wife or their husband because they got a flat tire on the side of the road? Things like that we're not allowed to go ahead and scoff off and be in a bad attitude, because if we're in that bad attitude during this quote unquote suffering, what are we going to miss? That's really what they're putting us in that place to get. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's deep, but it gives purpose. It gives purpose to everything, though, and it respects everything. And I think that attention and our conditioning of our attitude is one of the most important things to do every day, is choose to have a good attitude no matter what comes up, because attitude is the deciding factor of whether this is suffering or it's joy. Yeah, you know You know, there was a period of time where, there was a period of time where, like, I thought something was wrong with me because I wouldn't get angry about things. Like, I realized everyone would get angry, and I began to kind of like believe it was like a weakness. And so I began to allow myself to get angry, but it was always like forced anger. Like, I was like, I'm supposed to be angry about this, so I'm going to choose to be angry, and realizing that's where you want things to be. You want things to be a choice. But then before you know it, you begin to develop bad habits out of that. And then it's like, I'm trying to get myself back to that more conscientious place where, man, like, the principle of anything can get you riled up. You can say, okay, the principle of this violation against me justify, and you can take one small little thing and say, well, the principle of it, I'm going to stand for this. And then you blow it up to mean like this existential crisis, when it's just like a person forgot to like use their turn signal, and it's like, it's to where do you draw the line of principles that you that you experience in your relationships with people, in your interactions with people? What justifies, getting really upset, and I don't know, I feel like that unless there's a real threat, and not just the principle of a threat, you have to make sure you're preserving your emotional and spiritual resources, because, we don't have infinite resources. We have, every day we have a certain amount of energy, and we can only, we kind of invest our resources, throughout the day in things that we want to grow. And I think if we invest them in areas that tomorrow we're going to be more apt to get angry because of this or that, that's really a vain pursuit. You're kind of just feeding unhappiness, but if you're able to kind of realize that your ability to not feed anger, feed the negativity, you can really cultivate your own sense of joy in a stronger way. That you don't deny that doesn't exist, but you're like, I'm going to choose happiness. I'm going to choose my joy, because I feel like in this life, that's what I want to invest in. I want to invest in positivity, and not ignore the negativity, but I want to transcend it. And I want to be able, because there's so much negativity to focus on, that it's a sign of strength to say, I'm not going to allow my own pain
painful narratives of my life to be triggered. Like, if, you know, I think a lot of times we don't dig deeper enough, you know, things that kind of, I think is probably a lot of what a lot of different political divisions have, is that we project onto different political parties or policies some sort of thing that we've experienced, to where we project onto it our own life pain, and we're unable to actually have dialogue, you know, that's disassociated and detached from, you know, from our own pain, you know. And so we bring to the political space our own, I don't know, I mean, our own trauma. And so when I think of a certain politician, I don't see them as a human. I see them as the personification of my pain or something, or, you know, something like that. And I think we feel like for some reason it's total free game for us to just unload on politicians. And it's like, that's the domain where I think, we can't afford to have such brokenness, because we're going to continue to have a broken country, a divided means of talking about issues. And we're going to keep relying on whatever side's, you know, loud enough, or, you know, louder, whatever side can actually threaten the other the most, you know. And so that sort of paradigm, unfortunately, you know, I don't see it getting much better, but I feel like people that are developing the psychological health of this country and of our individual health, those are the people that are really going to rescue this place. And that's one of the reasons why too, man, I don't want to get too political with my podcast, but I also don't want to not be, you know, man, like I had a person on that I'm going to post probably tonight or tomorrow, who was a undocumented immigrant. And it's weird. I'm hearing her perspective, that she actually, you know, she actually believed in certain regulations and stuff, but she had a very open mind about things and a very interesting perspective. And it made me open my eyes. And, you know, and so it's weird, man, when you're able to sit down and not just jump down each other's throats at like the slightest disagreement, and hear like a human being behind, you know, the ideas. It's like, that's who you can connect with. I mean, I enjoy talking to people that disagree with me, but I love finding, okay, so where do we agree? And then where do things go, you know, go in different directions? Like one of my best friends like that, man. Like, we have really deep, we're so spiritually similar, and yet, you know, we have a lot of different political disagreements, and it's like, but we come back to the same thing about, okay, so let's try to understand each other. And it's to me, that's what we need, you know. And I feel like so much of our collective health, you know, comes down to our individual health, how we're able to treat another person, you know. And I don't think people really realize how important, you know, individuality, first truly loving yourself, then expressing that in ways with other people that you truly value them, because you see them as kind of a mirror, you know, of who you are in some ways, you know. And but yeah, man, so I really feel like that's really, you know, missing from our dialogue. And I'm hoping that people like us, and at least in our spheres of influence, you know, can can help be a solution, you know, or at least promote what I think are you know, the spiritual and psychological solutions. Because one of my favorite books is Carl Jung's The Undiscovered Self. And it's such a profound book that I've probably read at least 100 times. And I actually, last several years, I just felt drawn to this book, and I listened to it over and over and over again. And it talks about mass-mindedness, and how we have so much mass-mindedness in our society. And it's we really talk about spiritual things. We're trying to bring people back to the most potent value they can have as individuals, apart from the crowd. And that's how we're actually going to bring humanity, because as long as you're mass-minded, you can't bring to things, you know, the potent strength of individual conscience. You surrender your conscience for the crowd. And so for me, like, to really bring love into the equation of how we treat people and how we ultimately formulate things that we do politically, it comes down to cultivating individual conscience and individual love that we're able to, you know, in our own spirituality, you know. And I feel like that as an extension of that, we then treat, you know, another person that way, and then we can treat people that way. Any thoughts on that? Because I know, like, you in your book, you talk about the election a little bit and things, and I just was wondering what you thought.
Yeah, no. What's funny is I touch on all this stuff in the book. There's so much in there. Mm-hmm. But first thing, the two things I'm going to talk about: the fight for consciousness and the mirror living that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So I believe that the fiercest fight in galaxy, maybe of our existence, is our own personal fight for consciousness. Mm-hmm. So I think that whoever they are have figured out a way to steal power from us and create their own whatever, their own agenda through getting enough people to believe in their plan, which is getting enough, basically harnessing and stealing people's consciousness, literally consciousness, to construct a certain plan. So that's where that mass mind, I've not read those books, but the mass mind is remember, culture, personality, culture, personality. Yeah. So that's the same thing. It's like a Kim Kardashian, like how common is it now? I call it the flattening of society, because it used to be, New York had its thing, and LA had its thing, and Chicago had its thing. Now everybody from Denver to Dallas is all acting the same. It's that culture, personality, it's that mass mind, because they're falling into the trap of this consciousness, this fight for consciousness, which is led by the media and triggering these really low vibration things like anger, fear, coronavirus, BLM. It's, I'm not putting an opinion out. I'm just talking about the tools used to control the masses. And if you aren't wise enough to understand that they're being used for that, then we need to see some real solutions rather than just these triggering instantaneous media taglines. And so the fight for consciousness, I look at everything almost like it could be a trick. Almost like everybody. So not being, I want to take and I like to honestly just brush by concepts, take it back to my own center, think it through, take and keep what I like and discard or dish out what I don't. You know what I'm saying? And where we get our trust from, trusting our own path, once again, is our hyper focus on our own character conditioning. So I believe that is where you can trust your own truth, is through the kindness and through the uncredited acts of goodness, picking up that litter, not telling anybody about it, donating, not telling anybody about it. The secret do-goodings are how we ratchet up that, and that's how we can trust our truth, like that. So there's a fierce fight for consciousness. So be careful and be what you're ingesting, who you're around, what you're allowing even into you, right? Even that negative person that just, they have to spit out that last word. If you're around somebody like that just has to get it out, they're being unfair to your requests and your boundaries, and literally to your own consciousness. So sometimes, like, I don't turn on the TV because I don't even want it in my consciousness. I don't even want them to use me for their plan of attack. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So then, as far as mirror living, well, first off, real quick on the angry thoughts and stuff like that. What a technique that I use for, let's say I'm getting a surge of anger, I pretend that anger. Have you ever? What's that movie? Oh, it's so good. Damn it! It's a Pixar movie. In a little bit, but it's where all your emotions are kind of in the spaceship and they're trying to butt into the driver's seat. I need to remember that for future talks, because it's a mental health movie for kids, but it could be for anybody. But anyway, so say anger is coming up in your head. I pretend it's an angry person walking down the street, and I politely say, "Excuse me, sir," keep it moving. So I don't even allow myself to match the anger. Not like, you get out of here, right? Don't even match the anger. You politely to yourself, be polite with yourself and gentle with yourself, usher that thing down the way. The other thing is mirror living. The mirror living is being brave enough to see something in another person that we have inside us, even if we don't think that we do. Think of it as a pie graph, right? Say somebody is 50% anger. We'll just use these simple numbers. I go into this in the book, but because that's how I figured out how to try to explain it. Say two people are sitting at a cafe, an outdoor cafe, and there's an angry homeless person ranting and raving at the stoplight. And both of them, one person has 50% anger inside of them, the other person has 25% anger. Both of them can look over at that person that has 100% anger and learn how to polish up their anger a little bit more. So then the universe is using that quote unquote angry homeless person for you to look at it as a mirror to help you see how to change yourself. So if the lessons are coming to you, you're not over it yet. So if there's something, maybe it's only 1%, but you're not over it yet, and that's why the universe is putting it to yourself. So that's the bravery of true mirror living, is understanding the only reason you're seeing it is because you're not completely solved of that issue yet.
Wow, that's really cool. That's really cool, man. No, I totally know what you mean by that, because there's an awareness of like judgment that you have. You know, it's weird when you're in public with people. Many times there's only a small set of reactions people have when they are witnessing odd behavior. You know, there's the reaction to make fun of it. There's the reaction to like totally disassociate. You know, then there's maybe like then there's the reaction to kind of understand what's going on, and I don't know, man. I mean, I know there's probably more than that, but generally speaking, you know, man, there's this reaction that when people see it, it's like it can kind of trigger or kind of it can kind of jolt loose the area of someone that might actually somewhere inside them feel something similar, and in their like shame of it, they'll then make fun of it because it helps them disassociate from that part of themselves, you know. And I've almost more and more have learned this idea of kind of understanding that then you never have the right to look down upon someone for something, because, you know, we all have the capacity to be almost anything everybody else is. And there is it's, you know, woe to the person who thinks they're superior, because you're going to have that same situation where you're failing at something, and you're not going to want people to actually look at you that way. And I feel like having that awareness, your conscience is going to be something that can kind of hold your own failure in a way, knowing that, you know, you haven't judged others that way, and there's almost more of a humility you're living in. You know, really recently, I've kind of discovered just how much people don't realize this, but humility is when you go beyond the surface of what humility kind of is, you begin to really go into areas of yourself that humility can be kind of a drug, because it fills you with this high of you're accessing more of who you are, you know, where otherwise you'd be trying to force yourself in pride to be something. When you kind of are able to dissolve that part of you and accept yourself, there's all of this area within you, all of your potential. You begin to really explore your potential, not because you want it to be there, but because in humility, you're actually facing yourself, and you can begin to realize, wow, when I actually let go and I actually humbled myself, there's these areas inside me I never knew existed. And humility oftentimes sensitizes you to your own potential, to your own joy, you know, to your own love, you know, because you're understanding yourself more, you know. And that, to me, that's something that recently, you know, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me tell you something really funny. One of my friends, Kelvin's first off, I've got nothing but respect for you. You're a super deep thinker, and you're smart, and you're awesome.
Yeah, man.
I think that your music's great. That's how we met. I listened to your music, and you're awesome.
Oh, thanks.
And the things that you write down on I don't scroll too much, but I do stop on your stuff, and it's really thought provoking. And it seems to be a synchronicity with my life too. You're always talking about something that is kind of close to the tip of my tongue. So Mad respect.
Dude,
but check this out. When we're talking about humility, this is hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thanks, man. So check it out. I was talking to my friend Kelvin, super duper artist, and he said, I can't remember. He couldn't remember who this quote is from, but it said, "Oh, humility, you're not that great." So it's double humble. So the fact that you're not you. This is a thought. We're talking about thoughts. But the fact that somebody would even be humble, don't even worry about that. You're not that great to be humble.
That's hilarious.
You know what I'm saying? How great is that? So it even further humbles you, right? It even further humbles. So it's and so it's a never ending.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that, but what you're talking about is on point. And I'm not trying to ruin it with that. It's just a really funny thing that had to be said.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. You know, there's a great.
That's all I have for that.
There's a great verse in I think like Exodus or something like that where it says, you know, and Moses was the meekest man on the face of the earth. And that's like, okay, no, that's pretty incredible. When we know Moses was a significant guy. What we fail to remember is that Moses wrote Exodus. So imagine writing, I am the most humble man on the face of the earth. You know, it's like, you know, humility or meekness isn't downplaying yourself. It's just accepting who you really are. You know, and you know, man, very few people I think in history could probably write that down. You know, and like, but it's well, you know, to me, spirituality isn't always like serious. Sometimes there's hilarious things in it. There's really funny truths you discover, and like that was something that to me is really always cracks me up because it's kind of like a paradox. You know, it's like some people would say it's a contradiction, but I think too often paradoxes and contradictions are kind of you know, they're close to each other. But for me, like the idea that humility is something that isn't just debasing oneself. I mean, too often it is, like in the West, because we're so prideful. But there's a point where humility is just accepting who you are. And even if you are, you know, accepting who you are and you're, you know, it's like this, it's like someone who is, you know, knows CPR, knows how to save someone's life. You know, it's like, we know it makes sense that if someone's dying, you know, the person's like, well, you know, I'm too humble to help that person. It's like, man, that's nonsensical. It's like someone who's humble just accepts who they are, and actually to act is to be humble because they are. I'm not going to filter myself and what I can offer someone else through this, you know, this cloud of so-called virtue. It's like humility kind of breaks us through, I think, some of the false spirituality into action, into actually being who we really are, you know, and you know, a lot of times that is someone that we need to be more mindful, be more, you know, less promoting of ourselves. But sometimes it is promoting ourselves in the right way, you know, and so I'm still getting used to that because, man, I still come from a mindset of almost like humility is, you know, kind of downplaying who you are when you know, at some point in your life, your purpose, humility is the opposite. It's actually, you know, taking the reins of your life and actually doing with confidence what you know to do and actually having the words to say to people in a way, and that you still have a watchful dimension of yourself where you're not going to, you know, promote yourself too much or in a forced way, but you're going to allow things to happen to you. And, you know, that's something that I'm still kind of trying to get right in, because it just seems like in social media world and a lot of the ways that we go about things, there's just so much like fakeness and so much like everyone has like an angle they're working. And I love authenticity. I love being genuine with people. And so, you know, I'm still trying to figure out that riddle of promoting myself in the things that I want to do without being a con artist, like you're saying, like have confidence in what I have to offer, but not conning people, you know.
Right. That's the gamble. That's the fine line. Is I would rather err on being too humble than err on being overconfident. You see what I'm saying? And if it undulates a little bit, It probably undulates a little bit because, for example, I already told you I did a bunch of cocaine. That's the other side of it. That's a boastful, overconfident, just ridiculous. And then, so I've been about a year and a half ago, I was called too humble by a guy in Miami. And I'm like, okay, well, I probably counteracted that overconfidence so far down where I did go below the surface. Like if this is the line, I probably went to, and now to try to find that same livable while being assertive enough, right? Humility is a great self-checker, right? Like, it's a one that the internal, I would much rather deal with a person that has an internal clock that's a little bit leaning towards the humble side than the other side. Yeah, that's what I would say. Absolutely. But there are definitely times where we have to poke our head above water and speak for ourselves, and that comes with, once again, trusting and knowing oneself enough to know when you're being wronged and you need to go above that level just a little bit. And the self-promotion is a really good indicator too, as far as if somebody is going a little too far above that line, because it's tasteless, it's classless, it's obvious as a turd on the floor, on the kitchen floor, and it turns people off. It turns, and that's not the only reason that we would not want to do it, but it would turn energetically your own cells off, right? I like to look at our cells like tiny little cute minions from Despicable Me. They're just little cute little minions in a good way, sitting there awaiting instruction. So why not be a positive, humble being your cells want to be around? And that's how we grow that aura. But so I think some of the overconfidence is actually insecurity. The overconfidence is actually insecurity. And if people are on this runaway train effect with social media and stuff like that, once again, it goes back to time will tell all. And then we have to figure out what we judge as successful anyways. So if we know ourselves and we're affecting just a small group, our cul-de-sac correctly, that is success, by the way. And if that cul-de-sac grows into a little town and into a bigger city, that's fine. But if you better be growing your little tadpole farm correctly before you're worried about doing online courses for whatever, you know what I'm saying? And becoming some whatever guru and this, that, and the next thing, because there are other things watching us, right? Like success isn't just measured in human accolades and bank accounts. There's a feeling that the universe shows you and gives you goosebumps when you are doing the right thing. So how much does anybody really need? Does anybody need to be how much money? So all that stuff should hopefully be a reason to want to be humble, just to stay more connected to one, the one which is all of us. And I think at some point, like someone's humility, there's a trial and error period, because I know for me, like there was a time where I was a lot more, waiting for some of the things to be unleashed in me, and like I don't know, I guess it's like the potential and it's, to me, humility is, it's almost like you at some point you bounce off the floor, like where you're instead of, like pride is like lifting yourself up. If you're keeping yourself down, well, to me, correct humility isn't always keeping yourself down. At some point, like it naturally has like this other dimension of confidence, because who you really are is being discovered. And, and so like the humility that recognizes, I think, other people's emotional and spiritual needs, it's in the recognition of your own spiritual and emotional needs, and kind of realizing that as you're discovering yourself, there's all these different ways that you now can meet the needs emotionally and spiritually to the world around you. And to me, humility is that thing that even when we're going through any sort of dark time or at some point, you're going to feel that ricochet where you bounce off the bottom. Like recently, man, I've been really dealing with some things myself, and man, like this past week, I had a friend that we're just really sharing a lot of things back and forth, and
There was one day where things got really bad. I really hadn't felt that bad in a while. And I was kind of just realizing there was things I hadn't addressed. And it was weird after kind of just allowing myself to go to these places. It allowed me to kind of make conscious some of these things. And it allowed me to kind of feel, I don't know, I was able to, in my humility, realize, okay, I know this isn't true, but this is a problem that I have to kind of address. And so it was almost like the very next day I could feel that ricochet. Like when I woke up, I felt, okay, I feel like I'm kind of out of the clouds or getting out of the clouds, you know. Then like today, of course, I feel really, really good, you know. And you know, so that's weird how I feel like when we are going through something, humility is something that allows us to go through the process of addressing what's really inside us. And that will ultimately, though, lead to some sort of resolution that we kind of bounce back from. You know, that's at some point, you know, humility doesn't just keep us down. You know, it's something that at some point, like it brings us down to meet something we need to meet. And then when it does, it brings us back up naturally. And so it's
helping you. Yeah, helping you address the discrepancy.
Mm-hmm.
Helping you address the discrepancy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's it. And yeah, and so and that's a brave way of looking at it, and it's also to do it in the public eye. It hurries up the process because you basically say, look, this is me, and now you have other eyes on you where you can't hide from it. And now you really address that that discrepancy, but it's a little scarier. But it's a way better way to solidify your foundation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And it's, I feel like we're getting better at having these kind of conversations. And I feel like, you know, man, really props to me. It's funny, dude, like we've talked for almost 2 hours or whatever, man. And it's like, it feels like we haven't been talking that long. Like you're so easy to talk to with these things, man. And you know, that's a person.
We'll do it again. Sometime.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And you really know that someone has done a lot of internal work when you have a conversation like this. And, you know, the energy and enthusiasm just feeds, and it's like you lose track of time. And it's a real exciting thing, man, because I think this is the domain that we live our lives in, that we have to internally have these conversations all throughout the day and everything that we do. And it keeps us emotionally and spiritually fresh. You know, we have to always keep things, you know, a lot of these things, man, we can get stuck in intellectually knowing them, but then it's like allowing them to be kind of activated to where emotionally and things that it brings us to that, it brings us to like a fresh appreciation of ourselves, of our unique life, and of the life that we're blessed to be able to have, you know, man, because I really feel like we all can really realize our own life. You know, we see everything else through the lens of our own life. And so even if we look at someone else and look at the things that other people have, it's still through the lens of ourselves. And if we are not nourishing our own self and our own depth and appreciating, we are going to pretty soon just lack that appropriate way of viewing the world outside us, because it'll be empty of the person that we are, you know. And it's like we're trying to cut ourselves off from the very thing that gives everything definition and meaning and freshness. And it's like staying in that appreciation of ourselves, staying in that real self-love, that real self-understanding, and really realize just how much resource, emotional and spiritual resource is there. I call it joy, because to me, joy is a rich sense of meaning that allows us to have deeper happiness. You know, we're just not chasing highs, but we're kind of like, we are reaching a certain stability that can hold our experience in a deeper way. Because if we don't have that, then yeah, we may have these great blissful, you know, highs, but the lows, we won't be able to constructively organize and actually process and learn from. Like you're saying with the bowling lane with the two bumpers or whatever, man, it's like we really have to have that mindset and have that inward foundation to where we can appreciate wherever we are and really never let go of the only person we get to be. Because once we, kind of break ourselves off from that, we begin to try to build ourselves, anew, which we can't. We're just trying to build on the foundation of a fraction of ourselves. Like I think I experienced this in our teen years, when we all of a sudden feel the need to be an individual, and we think it's rejecting our family or rejecting like the things that we've done, and we don't realize, we're rejecting the foundation of everything that we know. And so we can't pretend to know something that we don't, and it's usually in our 20s and our 30s, we kind of begin to cultivate, that the realization, man, my childhood is actually pretty stinking cool. Like there's things about us, our whole life that we embrace. And it takes, I think, a lot of therapy and a lot of things of going back and recovering what's lost, from our early years, that, in our memory gives us a lot of rich meaning, to where we don't experience the world through the lens of our pain, but through our joy, and through the things throughout our early life really gave us our foundational awakening of what it means to be alive. And, man, and sounds like you kind of alluded to some of this too, about how with pain, and how, what was a phrase you said about how, it's like pain remembers, or it's like,
it may even be a military thing. Pain retained.
Yes. Yeah, man. And how identifying these places that we wouldn't, pain's a weird thing. Pain is kind of like we identify pain as physical pain, but we know there's emotional pain, but there's also a domain of pain that is worse than just ways that we feel, but it's what we don't feel. It's that numbness, to where we've totally muted ourselves and kind of amputated a part of ourselves, and it's like allowing ourselves to really go back in some of these areas and reattach, and go through the whole process of, it's almost like, when certain surgeries are done, like, our body many times rejects things that we're trying to, that we're trying to make whole. Like if we have a broken limb or something like that, and they get like, there's antibiotics or whatever we use to fight off the body from trying to attack the thing. I think our brokenness sometimes is like that, where our initial ideas of trying to restore ourselves, we feel like rejection from that. And we have to like identify and begin to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and understand that, man, our volatile emotions are going to be there, and we have to understand them. And it's an area of self-help, or whatever you want to call it, that I think I'm trying to like explore more, because I feel like you have to have the momentum of joy in order to really go through the, some of the areas of healing. Because if you don't have like a foundation, it's just going to sometimes just knock you off, off the track. And I know for myself, I've experienced moments of real of struggle sessions, or whatever you want to call it. And maybe there's no way of avoiding that. But I feel like as a life norm, you have to be able to, got to realize that you don't always have to be just, I don't know, man, just clobbered by the realizations of your pain and this and that. You can live your life at a pace where, and there's a sober awareness, there's things, but it doesn't weigh you down so much. You're living your life every day, trying to not just try to have these moments where you experience tremendous spiritual awakening, but you have it spread out over a period of time every day, so that you're not just trying to pursue, these huge spiritual experiences, but you're living, you have a spiritual pace that you're living at, that over a period of time, you recover so much of yourself. And that's something that I think, too often we hear about people have amazing experiences, and that's great. I mean, I've had my own amazing experiences and stuff, but what's more important is a lifestyle of and everything that I do, kind of going in a certain direction spiritually. and realizing that that's more important than having these amazing experiences or these amazing moments of illumination. You know, there's a real sober awareness that I think real spiritual experience brings you, that like you recognize truth within yourself, and you live your life open to different ways of seeing things. You live your life open to people, and you can kind of sense truth in others, and you can sense falsehood in others, you know. And but yeah, another rant there, but I was just kind of walking out there.
No, you're a deep thinker, man. You're awesome. You're awesome. But yeah, anytime, man. We'll do it again. It's been a great talk, and you provide a lot of energy for me as well, dude.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. I mean, we could just keep talking. So, man, well, we will. If you have any final words.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's really it, man. I really appreciate it. It was fun, and I see you as a beacon. I see you as a lighthouse for the folks.
Oh man!
So great job with doing your work.
You too,
and
man.
The only other thing is the Fear of Love and Corona. Yeah, I'm taking pre-orders for the Fear of Love and Corona, and then it should be up on Amazon, and then I'm looking for publishing too. So, you know, the biggest goal was to complete such a hard project, and I know it'll go where it's supposed to go. But thank you, man. And once again, I truly respect your light, the share you're shining on people, and keep up that writing and the music. You're awesome.
Thank you so much, man. Dude, it takes one to know one. And man, yeah, let's do this again real soon, man. And dude, thank you for everything. Thank you for the kind words. And yeah, I encourage everyone to check out your book. Follow you on Instagram. That's where you mostly do a lot of your activity, right? That's most of your posts and stuff.
So Cabil Gibbs on Instagram.
Okay, cool, man. All right, brother. Yeah, have a good night, man. Dude, it was a privilege to talk with you, man. And we'll do this again real soon. All right, man.